By the power of the seven heavens, for bad thing to happen tomorrow, rain go fall. Any INEC official wey go try one false mark tomorrow to ring election tomorrow, the first pikin go die. If he never born, you go understand the word of nemesis. Message for me today, the oracle himself to Governor Wike. Because of say you betrayed Peter Obi the last time, PDP go lose tomorrow. No be prophecy na reality. E go happen for your eye tomorrow. Bible talk say old men shall dream. Tomorrow we go turn your dream to nightmare with our PVC. I call you INEC Wike. Try to ring tomorrow, more we see. INEC, if una beavers no work tomorrow, una go leave Nigeria. Now physical and spiritual, now the youth go take fight una because una no go fit dey fraud our destiny for body light. No be children again. Even when this Desmond idiot call children, no una ask the question. Desmond Elliot, just pack and go to Cotonou because tomorrow is not for you. You must lose. Yes, because you no come back till last time to beg for that abomination word. After wait time to vote don't reach, go dey beg with your rotten mouth. Hustle. Tomorrow, 3 states must be disgraced tomorrow. As far as the oracle himself, I call upon all the LUP, all the obedient. Come outside and disgrace River State for me with your PVC. Also with Lagos with your PVC. And the last of all of them, Edo State, which I possess this place myself. Every blessed day, Governor Wike go there for live video, they rant him out. As he say he dey see tomorrow, he say no party go fit disgrace them. Governor Wike, see tomorrow, try to ring the election. I call upon all the ODSS and police, INEC officer. Una go march guard for these 3 states. These 3 states are too dangerous. River State, Governor Wike, that abomination when you do last time, it no go happen again this time. Also with Lagos, MC Olowo. See, now man you be, no be government, you be normal man. Even if you say you be politician, you have no right to the force people. They give them food when they don't hungry them. And the year I say you talk say, if you know say no go vote for APC, maybe you stay house. Who are you? After all the abomination when they happen for this sand, people start the bomb because of bad government. Then you they force and they bring back the nemesis back. It will never happen. Tomorrow they go use PVC. They drive una from this town. Una be demonic people.
President-elect Bola Tinubu has assured Nigerians that in selecting his government, it will not be weighed down by consideration extraneous to ability and performance, saying that the day for political gameship was long gone. Tinubu, in a statement he personally signed yesterday, said while there had been talks of government of national unity, his aim was much higher because he sought a government of national competence, reiterating that he will assemble competent men and women and young people from across Nigeria to build safer and more prosperous Nigeria. The president-elect noted that an important step towards restoring economic normalcy had been taken by the Supreme Court decision on the parity of old and new notes. He said that this had restored both the rule of law and the economic decency, and adding that this was not the end of the story but the beginning of more comprehensive solutions to the country's economic challenges. A lot to talk about this, Ayo.
Yes, I must say that the president-elect, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has spoken very well. In the speech or the statement that he made, or not a speech, was a statement that he signed, he addressed some critical issues. He talked about the combination of what would be the composition of his cabinet once he's sworn in as president. And one of the things he said very emphatically is that it will be based on competence. He's assuring us that he's going to put in young men and women across Nigeria based on competence, and he actually emphasized the fact that it would not be sentimental to religious beliefs, or you would not be discriminated with whether you pray in church or you choose to pray in the mosque. And this speaks to a number of things that have happened in this current administration in terms of the allegations or perhaps accusations of nepotism by the current president, Muhammadu Buhari. Therefore, speaking to that, and of course, the ethnic bias that we have seen and heard in the last few days, and during campaigns, both during the presidential elections and now towards the gubernatorial elections. Now, to give merit to his statements, if we look at his antecedents and his appointment, give it to the president-elect. One of the things he's been known to do quite well is in his appointments and how varied they are. Use Lagos State as a yardstick when he was governor. It was under his administration that we saw President Yemi Osinbajo emerge as Attorney General of the state. It was under his administration that we had Babatunde Raji Fashola, SAN, emerge as Chief of Staff. Now, later on went on to become Governor of the state of Lagos State, and then now Minister of Works and Housing. We also had under his administration as Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Ben Akabueze, the first appointment from the East, I must emphasize, as Commissioner of Budget and Economic Planning. So these are some of the key appointments amongst a number of things a number of people that he appointed. So one of the strengths of the president-elect's leadership is his ability to identify talent and be able to match talent to put to position and assemble a good team around him. Of course, not all of them, ended up being great. Some of them, he had a few rotten eggs amongst the pack, but majority of it would say that he's done well, and he was able to give them the needed, I believe, powers to do what they had to do. So give that to him. Based on that antecedent, we can give merit to this statement. However, I would like to take his attention to the fact that he said women. And under his administration, yes, there were some women like Chief Mrs. Kemi Nelson and a few others like Chief Teju Phillips, but he could have done better in terms of female representation in government and perhaps more, younger people represented. So this is great. And a few other things he said, I'm sure Dr. Bati and Rufai will touch on those things. But just to mention that the work ahead of the next president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, now the president-elect Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is very deep. It's huge. The task ahead with limited resources in line with our debt profile. However, with a great team, we do believe it can be delivered.
Okay, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu says there has been a lot of talk about government of national unity. He says my target is higher than that. The age of gamemanship is long gone. On the contrary, this is all about gamemanship. Sorry to say, but that is the truth. In political science in Nigeria, it was Billy Dudley, Professor Billy Dudley, who popularized the concept of game theory in Nigeria's political science, Nigerian politics. To break it down without being pedantic, it simply means in terms of the interaction between or among political actors, there are rational parts in terms of strategy in which you stay ahead of the game. I'm trying to simplify a far more complex concept. So what Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is trying to do is really playing a game. And the game he's playing is to project himself as the owner of the game, to seize the momentum. And I must have mentioned this before in this forum, that immediately he was declared president-elect, he has made a number of moves. He went to visit the president, went to visit the Oba of Lagos, he showed up in Lagos. He has issued quite a number of statements, and yesterday he issued another statement in which he tried to respond to the idea of forming a government of national unity. So, in that same statement that I issued yesterday, he said, while other people are going to court, while it's their right to do so, I'm going ahead. So he's creating a momentum, he's taking charge, he's trying to take ownership of the game, regardless of what happens, along the judicial process. So that's why this is all about gamemanship. Let us not deceive ourselves. However, the point that he has made is promising to assemble not a government of national unity, but a government of capable, competent people with character. Those phrases are familiar. This is the same thing that Peter Obi talks about all the time. He talks about character, he talks about competence, he talks about collaboration. And isn't it part of the game? When your opponent is saying something, you take ownership of it and you run with it. And, it becomes your own. That's how the game is played. But it is important. Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is telling us that he's going to run a cabinet of very competent people, and it will be national competence. The emphasis on national in itself, suggests that it will still be a government of national unity. To be a government that will, reflect the federal character, which is something that he has consistently argued for, federalism. So Nigerians, of course, don't expect a cabinet of mediocres. We expect that it to be a cabinet of very competent people who have character, who have ability, capacity. That's the other word, who have capacity to deliver. Because Nigeria is at a critical point whereby we cannot afford to go forward with the second 11. We have to go out there with the first 11. The other point to be made, of course, is that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in that statement reiterated, some of the highlights of his contract with Nigerians. He says he will provide food, he will eliminate poverty, he will focus on women. That's the game. That's supposed to resonate. He will focus on the youthful energy of Nigerians, which is something that is in his 84-page manifesto, on restoring hope, restoration of hope and all of that, hope assured and all of that. So, but it's good that, he knows how to play the game. Game theory is all about strategy, and he's trying to get ahead of it and, gain the trust of Nigerians, while other players are talking about going to court, talking about collation of results. He is already looking ahead. But he has made all the right noises. But as they say, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. And this is at two levels. When the matter before the tribunal or the courts, is resolved, and if eventually, he is sworn in, then of course, you'll remember that Nigerians will hold him down to all these promises about all the things he has said, both in his manifesto and in the statement now issued about what he will do for Nigerians.
Dr. Abati, you inspired me so much again to talk about our brother Nash this morning. Professor Nash talks about game theory, equilibrium, zero-sum game and the likes. In all of this, what we see is the fact that the zero-sum game is being played on the Nigerian people. When you look at it deeply, it's about the politicians, but not about the Nigerian people. What do the Nigerian people need? They need justice. They need justice as regards an electoral process. So when somebody, the president-elect, starts to talk about national competence and all of that, irrespective of the elections, the question we should ask him is, can he vouch for the process that brought him in? Because yesterday, one of his spokespersons, Mr. Dele Alake, said this elections has been the fairest and the fairest since 1999. I put it to Mr. Dele Alake that what he said is untrue. It's a lie. These elections were not free, were not fair, were fraught with a lot of irregularities. And part of the game theory you're also talking about, Dr. Abati, is also media manipulation. That's another game. And that's why I say, see, in the coming days, there's going to be a fight for the truth. What dominates the truth? And in fighting for the truth, a lot of societal actors will deploy many tactics. Part of them is one tactic called gaslighting. What is gaslighting? They tell you something that happened never happened. In fact, they will controvert your evidence and say your evidence isn't true. When people are gaslighting you, after they've been able to controvert your evidence, they say go and provide your evidence. And you're going to see a lot of that. So Nigerian people, please be watchful. A lot of those games are going to happen. There's going to be an all-out media war in the coming days. It's part of the game. But the sad reality of the game is that Nigerians are always being played in the zero-sum game. The zero-sum game in game theory is pretty much a game that affects and favors the winner, and the other person doesn't get anything. Going back to his statement, it came out to say you build a government of competence, which is supposed to be the right refrain. But the question we should ask is, have we finished interrogating the process that led to his emergence in the first place before we can say we want to build a government of competence? Those are the questions we should ask ourselves. Yes, I have not ever subscribed to government of national unity because we know the historical antecedents of that. Shagari and Azikiwe tried that in 1979. We also ended. It is always going to be skewed in favor of one party or the other. But what a lot of Nigerians are commenting about is the fact that the process and the guidelines, were they followed by INEC? If the answer has been answered as regards that no, then let's allow the court take its course. And let's also be patient and conciliatory in the statement we make. I've got nothing against Bola Tinubu talking about he wants a government of competence. That's what we want, and that's a welcome development. Because for too many times, we've had a lot of incompetent people serve our country. But also, we should not, because we are in the spirit of political gamemanship, negating the truth, because the truth is the fabric that builds a society. And the funny thing about the truth is that it is resolute, it is constant, it never leaves. No matter how much you try as much as possible to bring about alternative reality, like Kelly and Conway invented that word, Trump surrogate in America, the truth is constant. And what is the truth about these elections? That INEC didn't follow its own process. And that's why we call on the judiciary to stand tall and allow the truth prevail in this country. So that's the grand analysis of it. But he can say he wants a government of competence, he can do power voting, he can flex muscle and all of that. He's president-elect, but he's still subject to the courts. That's all I'll say about this. Presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, has reiterated confidence in the judiciary to adjudicate in controversial presidential election, despite the controversy surrounding some of the rulings in recent times. But he said his trust in the Independent National Electoral Commission has evaporated. He said his confidence was drawn from the fact that justices were Nigerians and they were aware of how bad the situation had been in the country, adding that only the truth and justice will save the country. And what his reaction will be if the nation decided to go on with the situation, he said he would be shocked that if the country went on with the rascality of criminality. The former Anambra State governor said that it was disheartening that the giant of Africa could not deliver a simple election when small nations like Ghana could deliver with small margin errors and big nations like India were delivering with less than 5% margin of error. Obi reiterated his earlier position that what the Independent National Electoral Commission declared was false and that it was challenging the process and the declaration. Ayo.
Well, I think this answers your response to the last story perfectly, in terms of the process itself. Famously, he had mentioned that if you must be referred to as Your Excellency, the process by which you attain that position must be excellent. And he hasn't minced words ever since the 25th of February as to his opinions as to how INEC handled the presidential elections. I think it's quite a shame and sad that for our elections and to decide our leaders, we take it to the courts, when ideally it should be the people's wish through the ballots that should have a candidate emerge or their own leaders emerge. But because of the incompetence of the electoral body, as some have said, many candidates have had to seek redress in the courts, thereby making it seem as if the people's exercises become nothing. And I begin to ask the question as to the budget allocated to this body to execute an election. Because we must ask questions. We often don't ask for reports or audits of how money is spent to execute a project, especially a project that was fraught with a number of irregularities. If you had a business and you gave your CEO money to run a project, and the project came back with a lot of holes and issues, you would question the process, especially if the CEO didn't initially raise an alarm that the money or the funds provided was inadequate. So there's a money issue there. Then going back to what he said in terms of the courts, he's stated that his hope in INEC or his faith in INEC has evaporated and now looking to the justices. And perhaps he speaks for a number of Nigerians in terms of now the ball is in their court, literally. And we are asking that as Nigerians, no matter how, whatever your cadre in society, no one is removed from the challenges that we face. And asking and calling on the Supreme Court to ensure that in the spirit of fairness, their judgment is done in fairness and they take hold and it is done with due process properly followed. All Nigerians are asking for is for free, fair and credible elections and the candidate or the result that they chose. And we're hoping that since INEC wasn't able to deliver on that front, the Supreme Court will.
Well, Mr. Peter Obi is not alone in saying that he has very little trust or he has lost trust in INEC. This seems to be the pervasive opinion, either on the part of local observers or foreign observers, and also from the international media, from the Washington Post to the Economist, to the Chatham House Report, to Financial Times, to New York Times, to virtually every platform out there that described Nigeria's elections on February 25 as flawed election. Even local observers like the Yaga Africa, like the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, and others, even the West African observers, even the West African Elders Forum, the African Union Mission, the mission of the International Republican Institute, and the National Democratic Institute are all on the same page when they concluded that there were many flaws, many irregularities in the manner in which INEC conducted the elections on February 25. Now, the average Nigerians themselves have been up in protest. The other day in Port Harcourt, we had a group of women going onto the streets, indicting INEC and saying that the International National Electoral Commission going to the elections on March 18 must preserve the votes, must protect the votes, must make the people's votes count. So Peter Obi is not saying anything extraordinary. He's just echoing the fact that INEC disappointed Nigerians on February 25. The process did not live up to the expectations of Nigerians, as the US State Department pointed out. There are some commentators who have been saying, oh, the UK has now said, oh, we'll give that election a pass mark. Can't people make a difference between diplomacy and bare facts? The UK, of course, will encourage Nigerians to forge ahead and address whatever errors were there on February 25. So tomorrow is another election day. The expectation is that INEC will have learnt its lessons from February 25, and that tomorrow materials will arrive early, beavers will work, ad hoc officials of INEC will be decent, security officials will play their role, and that there will be no hanky-panky on the part of persons who demonstrated a predilection to suppress voters, to intimidate voters, to use the apparatus of the state to abuse the process tomorrow. The test is tomorrow, and tomorrow will be a major test for Nigerians. As for Peter Obi saying he is confident in the judiciary, he keeps saying this again and again. He said 3 times he had had to go to the courts, and the courts have done justice. Now, that statement about his confidence in the judiciary is to be properly underlined, and it is as follows: that the judiciary is the last hope of a common man. Nigerians have their misgivings about the judiciary. They are expecting that the judiciary would be above board, like Caesar's wife, as it is said, the judges will be as sober as they are supposed to be, and that justice will be done in the interest of the stability and progress of Nigeria. This is without prejudice to the evidence that is adduced before their lordships. After all, evidence is 99% of the law. So it requires also the council to do their due diligence. If they have a case, they have to prove it. They have said they have a case, but they must prove it. And so that's the only caveat in that regard. But the people are expecting that the judiciary, will be thorough in adjudicating the matters before it, and that justice will be done. But nobody must assume that they can predict the outcome of the process, or that they can prejudge their lordships in the matter. At the end of the day, all the parties concerned, whatever the outcome, must conduct themselves after the fashion of gentlemen, even if I know very well that the matter will eventually be resolved in the court of public opinion. Now that everybody in Nigeria has become a lawyer, everybody is interpreting the law, everybody is giving rulings outside the courtroom. But what the system provides is a legal framework that is in place. So confidence in the judiciary, because if you lose confidence in the judiciary, then hope is lost.
I mean, to a very large extent. So I quoted Nash Equilibrium the earlier time by John Nash, who was trying to say, but we have gotten to that point where strategies are beginning to balance themselves out. The strategies of people that feel they can own the situation of things and the state, and the strategies of people that feel things should be done in a certain way. So the question will be, what is the dominant strategy? One of it will be how strong the case will be put forward. How strong the case will be made in the public space, number one, which has to do with the court of public opinion, and also in the legal space, which is what the judges would interpret. And for that, what we can only call on the judiciary to do is to have, that level of balance and fairness, and we trust their judgment, but we can only call on them to do what is right. Secondly, the other part will be the confidence in our electoral process, which is INEC, which Mr. Peter Obi said he has lost trust in INEC. So there's going to be also contending strategies to balance themselves out. And the contending strategies will lead to this election we're about to have tomorrow. The question will be, how well will the part contending be able to game the system and INEC to their own benefit? Who will have the dominant strategy? Will the dominant strategy be bribing the resident electoral commissioners, ballot box snatching, using thugs to disrupt? On the case of probability, I think that would largely be the case tomorrow. Will INEC stand up tall? Let's give them a very, very judicious amount of probability, because we want to have implicit confidence in them, despite the fact that we have every resolve not to have confidence in them. Because it is not only this election INEC has failed. Save for 2015 elections, most elections have been dogged with these irregularities. In fact, an incumbent president that was elected in 2007 said the elections that brought me in were dogged with irregularities. But also, the other strategy that is not dominant will be the reaction. Will they be able to match the might of these people that want to rig elections? Will people be able to stand tall despite the fact that they will be harassed in polling units? And don't get deceived, they will harass in polling units. Will people be able to secure their votes despite the onslaught of thugs? Will resident electoral commissioners and INEC officials be stopped when they're about to change results and all of that? And don't deceive yourself, they will try to do that tomorrow. So it will be contending strategies tomorrow. The question is, what strategy will dominate? Will it be people that are trying to sabotage the election? Will INEC aid them in doing this? Or people that want free and fair election and the votes of the people to count? Historically, it has always been, the dominant strategy has always been those that want to rig, sabotage election. They always have their way in Nigeria. That's one leg I'll be putting forward historically. But as a Nigerian, as a patriot, I will leave a modicum of hope that INEC will surprise me tomorrow, which I very much